What's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Amber McIntyre and I'm glad you're here. Today we're just going to hang out and edit a couple photos together using Darktable, like we always do. And I want to show you guys just how I go through and edit some photos. So I've seen multiple people comment on different threads, different YouTube videos, forums, asking how do I use Darktable as a beginner. There are tons of good beginner tutorials if you're new to Darktable that will walk you through step by step what all the different modules do. Bruce Williams is one that you want to check out. Rico Richardson is another one that you want to check out. And then there's some guys that have just a couple videos here and there that are older. For today, we're sticking to the basics, the old method with the base curves. We're just going to go through it like that. Filmic we're going to reserve for a more advanced kind of edit with me video. So today we're just going to hang out, do some basic edits for these photos, and I hope you stick around because I think it's going to be fun. All right, let's get started. Here we are. These are the images that I imported in the last video that I did, and in that video, if you haven't seen it already, you want to go check it out. I walked through how I go through a full photo session and decide which photos I want to keep, which ones I want to get rid of. So that one's really helpful just to see how I personally organize all my photos and get rid of the ones that I think are garbage. So these are the ones left that I liked. We're going to go through and just edit a couple of these really quickly. I mean, it's not going to be anything big or turned into a major ordeal. Okay, these two photos, this one is under and overexposed at the same time. So we're not even going to worry about that one right now. This one's just overexposed. We're not worrying about that right now either. We'll do another video later on down the road with some more advanced techniques on how to work with over and underexposed photos. But for now, we're just going to hang out with these few right here in the middle. So I'm going to double click this one and that's going to open it in Darkroom. Okay, so if you don't see some of the modules that I happen to be working with here, you can come down here to the bottom and click More Modules. And when you click this little arrow, it'll give you a list of all the modules that exist in Darktable, and you can go through and pick the one that you want to use. And you can even add it to your favorites just by clicking it. It'll add it to the list of favorites. So if you're on this tab with the star, you can see a list of favorited modules down there. I highly suggest taking the ones that you use most often and adding them to your favorites. And I can show you guys how I do that as I go through if you want. So let's see. The first thing I'm going to start with here is actually going to be white balance, which is already in my favorites. If it's not in your favorites and you need help finding it, you can always use the search right here and just type in white balance, hit enter, and you should see it come up right underneath. So this photo, I'm going to Okay, so for this photo, it's pretty good, but there's a little bit of purple down here kind of in her dress. So I'm going to bump up. No, I'm not. I'm going to reset that. Sometimes you'll see this, like it is really easy in Darktable, and I think this is one of the things that freaks out most beginners that don't have time to kind of put a bunch of work into it. It's really easy to jack up a photo really fast in here. And I'll just go ahead and tell you right now, Control plus the letter Z is undo. That's going to be your best friend, or at least it's my best friend. So when I accidentally click on tint and I whack it to the right and everything turns green, I'm like, ah! You can either hit undo, Control Z, to go back to how it was, or you can click up here on reset parameters and it'll reset everything you just did in that module. Okay, so white balance. I'm going to turn this to shade. So if you want to see how I did this, I went down here to preset. You can click the arrow and then you can change it from daylight or shade. Shade is actually where we were, so I'm probably going to leave it at that. You can leave it as white fluorescent. You can just go through and pick like what kind of situation you were in, or you can do it based on your camera already. So I'm going to flip between camera neutral and shade, and I think camera neutral actually gets it a little bit closer to how it looked when we were there. Alright, so that's all for the white balance. We're done with that one. I just clicked the name of the module again to collapse it and make it smaller, so that way I have room for more modules underneath. And let's do now crop and rotate comes up. So we're going to add it to our favorites down here. So to add them to your favorites, you actually have to be down here in the bottom section for more modules. Where'd it go? I just went past it. There it is. And then you can see it up here in your favorites. See, so now I have 2. And if I decide that I don't want this in my favorites anymore, I can just click it down here at the bottom again and it'll get rid of it. So we want to crop and rotate, and I want to bring this down just a little so that her eyes are right there in the middle of the rule of thirds. So I'm going to come up here and drag the corner, and I'm just going to drag it down a little until it's on her eyes. I'm actually going to drag it a little bit more so I get the corner of that door out of the top of the shot, and then I'm going to bring it up a little bit more from the bottom so that her eyes are still in the rule of thirds there. Okay, now to apply this crop, I was trying to hit enter all the time at first. You have to double click. So come off here to the side, just kind of double click like that, and it will apply that crop. Now I want to come down to sharpening, and I want to sharpen this a little bit. I'm going to bump up my radius a little. And then the amount down here is actually what does the sharpening. So you can see when I get it all the way over, she's starting to look sharper, her eyes look brighter, her hair looks a little bit better. Still hasn't messed with the background much, but I'm bumping it all the way. Actually, I'm going to bring it a little bit less than all the way just because it looks a little unnatural if I've got it all the way turned up. So I'm just going to, usually I like to push things farther than I should and then bring it back a little bit rather than underdoing it. If that makes any sense. So, okay, so there's a lot of purpley hue to this photo that I don't really love. And she's standing against a wall with some bricks, so there is that. Now, her dress does actually have like a light pink under it. Like this flower is light pink. It has like a light purple or a light pink, but it was actually almost white. So I want to pull the purple out. So for that, I'm going to go to color zones. Color zones is actually one of my favorite tools to use for color correction in Darktable, and I don't think it's everyone's first choice for color correction, but I really like it because I feel like more control over what colors I'm increasing the brightness or the saturation of and what colors I'm decreasing. So you can click this little eyedropper over here, the plus one, and it will add its own curve based on whatever color you click on in the image. So I can click on her skin. It's going to give me a little section right here that shows me this gray line is actually the color of her skin. So for saturation, I could bump it up, make it way more saturated. You can see it's starting to look weirdly orange and splotchy in her skin. Or I can bring it way down, and then it desaturates those pixels. So you really can select, it adds these little points to the line, to the graph, and you can move those all over the place. So if I wanted to desaturate the greens in the image, I could bring those way down. Or if I just wanted purple, I could bring those way down. So you can just kind of play around with it and see what you like. We're on the tab here at the top for saturation. There's also one for hue and one for lightness. So these work just like they would in another photo editor where you can change the lumosity. You can change how light that color is. You can change the lightness or darkness of that color, or you can also change the hue. So I could turn something that's yellow into something that's blue or green, just depending what you want to do. There's a lot of options here, and it's pretty powerful. So I'm going to go back to saturation, and actually I'm going to, I reset it all, so it's fine. So I'm going to use the eyedropper, and I am going to find the purple in her dress. I'm just drawing a little box. I just click the mouse and drag it over to make a box. Now it's telling me that that color is actually right here. To my eye, that looks purple, but I would have thought it was over here. But we're going to go with what the software suggests. So I'm going to pull that color down a little just to desaturate it. And I think that worked pretty well. I'm also going to pull down a little bit of the one next to it just to see. Okay, so now I want to compare what this looked like before to what it looks like now. I'm going to show you an easy way to do that, and that is to come over here to snapshots. I'm actually going to come in here and take a snapshot of the last step that I did and then compare it to this step and see if this is what I like or if it's what I wanted. So I'm going to come down here to sharpen, and I'm just going to click on the last thing I did, step 13 for me, which was sharpen, and I'm going to come up here and take a snapshot. All right, then I'm going to click back on number 14, which is where I am now, so it puts me back where I am, and then I'm going to click sharpen up here, and then I can scoot this over to see the difference of before and after. So this was before I took that purple color out, swipe it over, and this is after. So you can see down here in her dress, that purple blue color that I was worried about is now gone because I've taken all the saturation out of it. I want to add a little bit of contrast, I think. Sometimes it's faster for me to get the modules by searching them, and I just want local contrast. Now, I'm going to change the contrast in the shadows. Now, one other thing I will say about Darktable, it's really powerful, but sometimes it takes it a second to catch up, especially if you're using a computer with less amount of RAM or a slower, older computer. You may need to click it and like wait a few seconds before you move on, because you will jack your stuff up if you click a slider halfway through and think, oh, it's not doing anything, so you whack it all the way to the right and then move on, and then you have to go back and like try to figure out, oh crap, what did I change, to fix it back like it was before. So I'm going to look at the shadows here, and let's bump this a little. I'm increasing the contrast in the shadows here. I don't want it to get too weird looking. And I don't like the look of the contrast adjustment in the highlights. So I'm just doing shadows. That's fine. Let's try the mid-tone range. That's what I want right there. I want a little bit more saturation there in the mid-tones. Okay. I think that's good. Now, because I took the blues out of the image, I think this right here is looking just a little bit flat. I don't know what it is. It needs some more red or some more orange, some yellow. It needs to get a little more punch to it. So let's play around with Velvia. This is going to give it like a little more saturation. So I'm going to bump this just a little. Oh man, look at that. Yeah, baby. That looks good. Now there's a little bit of red around her eyes that I'm not a super fan of, but a lot of that's probably just reflection because I was wearing a red shirt, which is not great, and she's wearing a pink mask. So there's not too much I'm going to do about that, but we can try to get that pulled out in just a second. So I'm going to clear this snapshot just by hitting this button that resets the parameters. So that's going to reset the snapshot I took. I'm now going to go down here to the original and take a snapshot of it. And now we're going to compare the original to where we have ended up here. That's going to be off because I cropped it, but here you go. So this is what we started with. Here's the original. This is what we've ended with so far. Pretty happy with that. All right, this red around her eyes is going to bother me a little bit, so let's go try to get that out of there. I could go back to color zones and just pull the reds down, but that's going to pull down the reds for my whole image, and there's a lot of red back here in the brick that I don't want to lose. So I'm going to go to color correction, and I'm going to draw a mask, which is not really beginner level stuff. But we're going to do it because this is bothering me. So we're going to do an easy mask, and I'm going to tell you guys that masks for Darktable are sort of equivalent to brushes in Lightroom. So in Lightroom, you could take a brush and brush it over her eyes, just like the section that you wanted to get rid of, and pull the color out of that, or add color to it, or desaturate or saturate, or whatever you wanted to do. You could do that with a brush. In Darktable, you use a mask, and a layer to do the same effect. So if I wanted to do like a spot correction and I wanted to pull a spot out of the grass that was gross, or like a bird flying by in the clouds, I would use a mask, draw it around that object, and then clone it out. And then I can add another mask on top of that if I didn't get it all, or I wanted to do something different. You can kind of layer those on top of each other. So it's kind of the same way that you would layer brushes in Lightroom, but it just works a little bit differently. It's going to take a little bit of a mental shift to get used to it. So here's what I'm going to do for our mask. I'm going to scroll down so I can see the masks. So they're right here down at the bottom of each module. So like the color zones has one, two, down here at the bottom of it. So I could do that if I wanted to. Actually, that may be a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to go here to Drawn Mask, which is the pencil. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you get a bunch of options. I'm also going to collapse this More Modules section down here at the bottom just so we can see all of the options that we have for masks here together all in one spot. So I'm actually going to use the brush here. Now, you get a little warning up here at the top, or not a warning, but a little help tip that says scroll to set scroll to set the brush size, Shift plus scroll to set the hardness, Control plus scroll to set the opacity. Our opacity right now is set at 100%, so I can hold down Control and scroll towards myself so it'll come back down a little bit, like to 80. And I can scroll up or down to make the brush size bigger or smaller. So I'm scrolling away from myself and it's making it smaller. Now I'm scrolling back toward myself and it makes it bigger. I want my brush size to be about like that. Okay, so I'm going to give it a little circle here around her eye. Not quite good with the drawn brush masks, right? Now I'm going to give it a lot of feathering here. All right, we're going to come over here to the red where there's that little peak. And I'm going to just drag it down. So I'm also dragging, I just clicked on a point beside it and I'm doing that to drag it up so that I have just a sharp little V here so that it's only pulling down the red. But if I pull it all the way down, just for an example, you can see that it didn't affect the reds back here, but it did pull some of the red out of her where her eye is. And I can click this little arrow again so that it doesn't show me the mask element so you can actually see what I've done here. But if I bring it back up, that's kind of what it was looking like before. See the pinkish here behind her eyelid. And if I pull it back down, you can see that just kind of desaturates it. Now if I pull it all the way down, it's getting crazy, so we don't want that. Alright, I'm just going to give it a nice light, barely anything. It's pulled some of the reds down off her eye. Pull that a little bit to the left so that it gets a little wider range of colors there. Okay, I don't want it to look weird because, I mean, she's a kid. I want it to still look natural, but there we go. That's that photo done. Donezo. Now, the cool thing that I like to do, if you're editing a photo that has 2 or 3 photos exactly like it right next to it, you can copy and paste the edits that you just did for one photo onto multiple photos. I'm going to show you guys how to do that because that's one of my favorite things to save time when I'm doing this kind of a workflow. So there's 2 things you can do. You can Control C at this point right here that's going to copy everything that I just did to this photo, and then I can click the next photo that I want to paste those edits on and hit Control V, Control plus the letter V, and it's going to paste all those edits onto this other photo. However, I did apply a crop and I applied a mask directly to her eye, so I don't want to copy all of those things over onto the next photo just however Darktable sees fit, because it may not be exactly how I want it. You've got your photo, you've clicked on it, go back to the Lighttable module in the upper right hand corner, and then you'll be able to see all your photos at a glance. So now I can click this photo. You're going to want to go to History Stack. This is where you have the options to copy and paste the edits that you've made to this photo to other photos if you wanted, and you can actually choose what steps you want copied over and which ones you don't. So I'm going to copy this history stack, and it pulls up this nice little pop-up window where I can click on or off the things that I may not want to copy over. So anything checked is going to copy and paste over to the next photo. Anything unchecked is not. So I'm going to uncheck that second color zones is where I did the mask. So that's fine. I'm just going to uncheck crop and rotate because I don't want to copy that onto the next thing that I do. The rest should be fine. So I'm going to hit OK because I've got them all selected that I want. Then I can come to the next photo and I can paste. And it gives me the option to choose which ones, and I've already got that unchecked, so that's perfect. I'm just going to hit OK. And now you should be able to see that photo gets the same edits that I just applied to the first one pasted onto it. So I'm going to double click it and it's going to open it bigger here. And now you can see what I've done with it. So pretty cool. So this photo is already pretty well finished. I'm not really going to do anything else to it. Let me check the crop situation and see if I can get that door out. I don't think I'm going to be able to without cropping too close to her head. So I'm not going to really worry about it. That's alright, I've got a couple others, so I'll leave this one like this. Next photo. Now, I'll show you guys how to copy and paste from here if you want, because these photos are like exactly the same. They were taken from the same angle, same settings, everything else is identical. So I'm going to come on that first one here and hit Control and the letter C. That copies everything that I did to this photo. And then I come click on the next photo and hit Control V. And it pastes it. So now I have two super identical looking images because they were shot from the same spot, same angle, same settings, and now I've copied and pasted the edits from the first photo onto the second. Alright, so I think for this one I would like to have one black and white. So let me do this. I'm going to Control C again and copy and paste my edits onto this photo, so that way I've cropped out the top and I've got things like I want them. And now I'm going to go out of color zones. Alright, contrast, brightness, saturation. Because I'm going to turn this black and white, I'm going to bump up the contrast quite a bit, and then I'm going to pull down the saturation. Now, I like to be able to kind of play with these, so I'm going to bring this down. I'm just going to play with this and bring it around to the spot where I think I want it. So I'm going to do it like that. Now, there's like 5 different ways that you can make a photo black and white here. I'm going for just what's the easiest, what's coming to my mind first, get it done, moving on. So I've messed with contrast, brightness, saturation. Now I actually want to go to shadows and highlights, so let's go over there. Here we are. Now when I turn this on, it's automatically going to adjust my highlights down and my shadows up, and I don't necessarily want that, so I'm going to bring my highlights back to the middle because they were fine how they were. And I'm going to bring my shadows back down a little. I just wanted a little tiny bit of increase in the shadows. Alright, I like that. I'm happy with that. Alright, you guys want to see how far we've come on this one? This one's going to be fun. Alright, so I'm going to take a snapshot of this as it is. So this is a snapshot of the last thing that I did. And I'm going to work my way back, go down to the beginning and click original. And then I'm going to come up here and click on my snapshot, and it gives me this bar. So I'm going to click this and drag it over the photo. There we go. Before, there's after. I like this one. The only other thing that I may do is I think I'm going to add a little bit of a vignette. I don't add vignettes to all my photos or even most of them. All vignetting, if anyone's interested. If you search vignette, you are not going to find it. I'm going to turn it on. Now, for the vignette, let me turn off the snapshot here really quickly. For the vignette, you get, what did I just do? You guys see what I just did? I just like got rid of everything I had done when I deleted my snapshot. So I'm going to hit Control Z. I'm going to hit it again. Woo! Told ya. Control C, save your butt. Alright, so now I'm going to go back to vignettes. I'm not even sure how I did that, but it's fine. Alright, vignetting. It's going to give you 2 circles. You can play with making it bigger or smaller. The first circle is actually what's not going to be vignetted. The second circle is the actual vignette. So you can bring them closer together if you want it to be more concentrated. So this first circle is going to control the size of what you have that's going to look normal still. The second circle out here, or ellipse, or whatever you have, is going to be the strength of your feathering. So the closer these 2 lines are together, the more increased. The closer these 2 lines are together, the sharper or harsher the contrast is going to be between your regular photo and the vignette. So if you like this look, go for it. I like mine to be very feathered. My philosophy for vignettes is you don't really want to be able to see them. You should be able to tell they're there barely. Like, you shouldn't even really notice that you're looking at a vignette, if that makes any sense. So I'm making mine kind of an ellipse because she's tall and skinny. So, and then you can click on this arrow in the middle. You can't really see it because of where it's at on this photo, but there's an arrow in the middle. And you can click on that and drag it around to place it how you want it. I'm bringing this feathering in just a little because I want it a little darker on the top and the bottom. There we go. Okay. Dunzo. Go away, vignetting. Alright, I'm just click it once and that'll go away. Alright. I don't like it that strong. You can also use the sliders over here on the side, just in case you didn't know that part. Fall off strength is your feathering. Scale is how big your actual vignette is. So, alright, I'm going to leave mine about there. Like I said, I don't like much vignetting. I just want a little tiny bit to kind of draw your eye in towards her off of the corner of the frame. So, okay, there's that one. Do you guys want to keep going? Let's do one more. I probably have time for one more before my kids get home. We've done a few that are like this. Let's do one that's not in the same spot. Ugh, I'm in love with this one. This one's not even going to really need very much editing from me. Okay, we're going to sharpen it a bit. Click the wrong slider. We're going to sharpen it using the amount slider here. Look at that perfect little ballet bun. That took me forever to do, just so you guys know. I am not a hairstylist. We had to practice quite a bit for that, which is probably why I like this photo. Plus, I also love that it already has kind of its own vignette almost. I'm not going to do much to it because I like the moody feel of this one already. I'm just going to do a little bit of correcting. So let's go over here to my favorites because I've already saved white balance over here. So I'm going to click there first. Let's come over here to, let's do a spot white balance, and I'm going to, woo! I didn't know if you scrolled through that, it would scroll through these. That's cool. Alright, we're going to leave it as shade because it was a shady day. But I actually want to add a little bit of yellow to that. There we go. I like my photos to have a little bit of a warm feel to them. Even if that's not really realistic of how the scene was, I like them that way, so that's how I'm doing them. Okay, Now I want to do some shadows and highlights. I thought I saved that module. Guys, I did not do a good job of saving these modules. I'm sorry. I'm going to scroll down. We'll actually save it this time. Shadows and highlights saved. So now it's in my favorites here. Let's go there and turn it on. I'm going to put the highlights back where they were. Hate how it does that. We're going to leave the shadows not very much bumped up. We're just bumping them a tiny bit because I don't want it to look unnatural down here. So watch what it does if I bump it too much. It's looking crazy. This is what I mean when I say Darktable is more powerful than Lightroom, because there's no way you would be able to move a slider far enough to get those kind of results in Lightroom. Kind of, they made it dummy proof. They made Lightroom dummy proof, kind of. But here you have so much more control over every little thing that you do kind of have to be careful how far you click the sliders, because you don't want to mess up your image. Actually, let me go back here. I do want to pull my highlights down just a little. Yeah, because I do want to be able to see more of this thing, whatever it was. It was some kind of like a hair bow, but I want to be able to see a little bit more of it. And that's good. Let's go to get some contrast here. So we're going to go back to contrast, brightness, saturation. And I'm going to bump the contrast. Never mind. I'm not. Actually, I like it better without. I'm going to brighten the whole image up just a little. I like my stuff light and bright. Alright, we're going to leave it like that. Now, let's say I wanted to do a second version of this photo. I only have one actual photo of this, but let's say I wanted one black and white and one in color. I can come over here, make sure you're still clicked on the image, but come over here to Lighttable. And under selected images, the second one, there's an option to duplicate. If you hit duplicate, it gives you a second version of the same image. So I can double click that to go back to Darkroom. And it shows them in yellow because it shows that they're a duplicate, but I can come over here and turn my saturation back down just like I did before. And on this one, I do want to bump my contrast up a little bit. Then I'm going to go back to my shadows and bump up my shadows a little bit more. Ooh, no I'm not. I forgot about that. We're going to leave it right there. I'm going to come back to contrast, and I don't want that much contrast because I don't want to lose it all. Okay. I'm just kind of playing. Kind of like that. I do like the color image better on this one because you can tell more what it is. I feel like if I just saw this as a black and white, I would be like, is that the side of a vase? What is this? But that one I pretty well know. Nope, it's a kid in her ballet bun. Alright. This has also got a little bit of a greenish. I feel like I'm seeing green over here. That may just be from the yellow. Let's go back to color zones. And I'm going to pick this color. Yeah, there it is, yellow and green. I'm going to pull down on the green side. Just a little. Okay, we're still in saturation. So see, that left kind of the yellow that I had put in for her skin tones. See that this red to the yellow is kind of like the skin section. So that left all that there, and I was able to pull down just the peak right here of that green, and it kind of pulled a little bit of green out of the background. So if we want to see that, let's see. There's the difference. Before, after. Before, after. You can see it didn't change down here on her skin. It didn't change her skin tones at all. But it did change the top. So, okay, I'm pretty happy with that one. I think that's probably all I have time to edit for today. That should give you guys at least just like a little look at some of the big highlight modules that I like to use. The highlight modules, that sounds weird. That should give you guys a look at some of the modules that I like to use for editing my photos. You can do what you will. There are, with the newest version of Darktable, so I'm in 3.2.1 right now, Filmic has been upgraded and overhauled, and there's been a lot of work put into it. I'm not going to pretend to understand it yet, so I'm not delving into that. I had another video where I kind of played around with it, and I got really, really awesome results, so I'm going to encourage you to go play around with it, watch some of Bruce's videos. I can link those below, but he has a new one on the Filmic module and what all has been changed. I'm still going through those, kind of trying to play with them and figure it out for myself, so I'm not delving into any of that more advanced stuff right here. This is just kind of base curves, regular stuff. Oh, I didn't show you how to do a base curve. Let's do one really quick where I show you how to do a base curve. Okay guys, last one. I'm going to show you guys how I do base curves here. So I'm going to come to base curve right here, and I'm going to add that to my favorites. Come up to my favorites module, and I'm in search. I need my favorites. If you're in here and you can't find anything, click the name of whatever module is open and biggest, and it'll make it go away. I feel like I can do that there. So you can click base curve here. It's automatically applying one for me in here now when you first import photos. You can turn that on or off in your settings. I have it turned on, so I'm not even going in and adding base curves because I've already done it. But let's say that I wanted to start with this image just flat, straight as it was out of camera. And I'll come down here to display encoding, and then I can hit compress history stack just like we did earlier on another photo, I think. If not, this is how you do it. You can go to display encoding, which is like the last thing that it really needs to be able to show you the photo, and you can turn all that off. You can also turn off these orientation, highlight, reconstruction, and white balance if you want to. Like I could click original and then compress history stack. It'll pull all those back out of there. No, it's not. It's just reordering them. Anyways, okay, so this resets my base curve. So you can come over here to the base curve module. You have options here if you click the little hamburger menu where you can select. It should automatically pull one that's somewhat like the camera that it thinks you're using, and then it should give you a bunch of other options. So you can go through and click them all and see which one you like. If you really like the way that Konica Minolta cameras look, you could click that and it'll apply that base curve to your photo, and then boom, you can start from there and edit that way. I'm using a 5D Mark III, so this is as close as it's going to get, but I actually like Canon EOS Like and Canon EOS Like Alternate as well, so you can kind of click through all three of those and play around with them. The difference I'm seeing up here is in this overblown portion. The 5D Mark III or Mark II one made that worse, so I'm not going to worry about that. I don't really love any of those. Anyway, so that's what you can do as far as clicking on a preset one. You can also just come into the curve and make it look how you want. So I can set a point, let's say right here, and pull some of my highlights up just a little bit. Then I can come here and set a point here and pull my shadows down. This can give you kind of like a crazy wonky curve. I mean, you can play around with stuff. So this is your, let me reset it, reset. So anything like from here is the midpoint of your photo. So this is going to be like your grays and your colors that are in the middle. Up here is going to be your highlights, and down here is going to be your shadows. So I can click here and push that up to bump up my shadows. I can click here to my highlights and drag it down to decrease my highlights, or I can push it up to increase my highlights. So what I like to do if I'm going to do it just myself is kind of come here about 2/3 of the way. Oh my Lanta. Let's reset the whole thing. So if I'm doing it by myself, I kind of like to come and start at the top. I'll usually pick something that's kind of like around the highlights and pull it up a little bit. And see, that gives me kind of a gentle slope here. And then I like to come here somewhere in the middle, pull it up as well for this photo to get some of those middle gray colors up. So that's kind of a good enough exposure, I think. So that's one way to kind of set your exposure, is doing it in the base curve module. You can also just come and start straight into exposure and you can do it from there. But I'm okay with this. So let's go to shadows and highlights. I'm going to turn it on because I do actually want it to bump my shadows up and pull my highlights down for this image. I didn't earlier, but for this one I do. Now my white point, I'm going to move this over a little. Alright, that's fine. I'm alright with it. I'm not hating it. So let's do contrast. What do you call smoothing? Blur. Alright, so because I have bumped these settings up so far, I'm starting to get a lot of noise down here. I can see it from as far away as I'm sitting and with this zoomed out. Side note, if you want to zoom into your photo to see, you can just scroll up with your mouse wheel and it will let you zoom in. Why do I have a snapshot on? It'll let you zoom in, then you can click in the photo and drag it around to pull it different directions. So I got a lot of aberration going on here and I've got some noise. Of course I do. You can see a little bit over here. So let's work on chromatic aberration first. I don't know how you spell that. Chromatic. Alright, I'm just going to hit automatic. Sure, fine, whatever. Can I turn it on? There we go. Alright, so now if I scroll back in, the purple is still there, but it took care of a lot of it. If it didn't do enough, you can also click here to multiple instances actions. So if you middle click, which is clicking on the little scrolly wheel in your mouse, you can set it to let you do this again. So if I wanted to do chromatic aberration and it didn't do it enough, I can come back and click it again and it'll add a second layer of it. I guess. I think. I hope. I'm sure y'all will let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. So there's that. We did that. Now, denoise is the next option, and you have several options here. There's one for raw denoise, which I really like. I haven't seen very many people do videos on it, but I really like that one. Denoise profile, though, is supposed to be the most basic, easiest to use, so I just usually start there. It's going to try to match your camera for what kind of settings you had it on. So you can click that and let it match to whatever you got, and it'll try to pull the noise out based on that. You can also do it manually down here, so you can do your strength is how you actually make it more denoised or less denoised. I'm going to leave it just like that, just a little bit. We didn't have very much going on there. Alright, now let's go back to crop before I forget. I want to crop out this because I just don't want to deal with that. It's easy enough to get rid of. Just like that, and it gets her eye just about in that little window for the rule of thirds. That's fine. I don't want to crop any from the bottom because I don't want to lose her dress, but that's close enough. So we're going to double click, get rid of that. Now I'm going to come back to my favorites and I am going to work on the white balance because that's rough. And I'm going to come down here and do cloudy. There we go. That's a lot better. And I still want it to be a little bit more yellow, so I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it. There we go. Now, color zones, same thing. I'm going to take out this color in her skirt, that bluish color. There we go. Now I'm going to come back here to my favorites again and work on my shadows. I actually want my shadows to come this way. I want them darker. Not that dark. Not that dark. But maybe like that. Yeah, I think that's nice. Okay. Let's give it a little bit of contrast. And then I'm done messing with this one. Actually, I lied. I'm giving it a tiny bit of contrast, and that was not much at all. And I also want to go to Velvia. Right here, and I want to turn that on because that just adds, it helps the colors in the image. So I feel like that adds a nice, pleasing amount rather than doing like bumping the saturation. I feel like Velvia's, it adds more natural looking colors. Alright, so that's all I'm going to get to today. I know my kids are going to be here any second, and that's going to derail this whole process. So, alright guys, that's all I'm going to get to for today. But I hope that was helpful. I hope that gives you a look at how I do some portrait kind of photography. Just, these are natural, candid kind of shots that I've taken of my own kids. And I have fun editing these. I like seeing how other people edit their photos and what their style is. So I think these are fun to watch. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you want more tutorials like this, or I guess this wasn't really a tutorial, but if you want to hang with me and edit more photos like this, put a comment down below, let me know. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel, like this video. Whoops. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. You know that helps me out so much. Hit that bell notification so you get notified when I put out future videos. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful, or if that was interesting for you to watch how someone else does their photo editing. So